Welcome back to my channel. If you did not already know, my name is Tolu. I'm a travel creator. I felt like my page wasn't going to be complete without having this particular video on YouTube. As someone from Nigeria, I always have to apply for a visa to almost all the countries I want to go to. And I live in Europe, and I feel like the most important visa you have to have if you live in Europe outside of the Schengen countries would be the Schengen Visa. So that is if you live in Ireland, if you live in the UK, if you live in Russia, Ukraine, and you're an immigrant, you absolutely need to have this visa in order to let you travel as much as you would want to. Nobody wants visa restrictions when there's no need for one. So while we are here, how to apply for the Schengen visa. I've listed all the things you need to have in this portrait. So now let's go through them one after the other. If you don't know what a Schengen visa is, it's basically a visa that allows you travel to about 26 countries in Europe. But this visa also lets you into other countries that are not in the Schengen zone but are also in Europe, like Croatia, Montenegro, Albania, Serbia, Bosnia. All these other countries you can easily go to if you have a valid Schengen visa. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to go about applying for your Schengen visa. First thing you have to do is decide what countries you're going to be going to, because this will determine the country to apply for your visa. Now, there's a very important rule around applying for a Schengen visa. The country you apply to doesn't always have to be your first port of entry. The Schengen rule states that it's either you apply to your first port of entry. So if you're going to be traveling and the country you're going to be landing in is, for example, Spain, you can apply to Spain. The other rule states that you can also apply to the country you're going to be staying the longest. So for example, you're traveling to Spain and Portugal. If you're going to be going in through Spain first, you don't necessarily have to apply through Spain. If you're spending 3 days in Spain and you want to spend 5 days in Portugal, you can also apply to Portugal and apply to Spain. It depends on which one you're doing first. So, contrary to popular belief, your first port of entry doesn't have to be the country you applied to. If you've not seen the Schengen form before, this is what it looks like. On this form, they're going to ask you a couple of things, which is rather extensive, and we're not going to go into that. Another thing they require is for you to submit a confirmed ticket. So it's not just by reserving a ticket, you have to show them that you've actually booked this ticket, that you're going to be going to the countries you say you'll be going to. Another thing they absolutely want to know is that you have booked your accommodation. They don't want you to come to their country and be lying around and you don't have somewhere to sleep. They want to know that you have a confirmed accommodation where you're going to be. A lot of accommodation companies have made this easy, so you can easily go on booking.com to do this, and that would sort out this part. One other important thing is they want to know that you're medically covered when you're in the country. So you need to submit your travel insurance when you're going to apply for your visa. 2 travel insurance companies that I might go to until I find other ones, if I do, I'll let you know, would be CoverWise, which usually works for people living in the UK, and Swisscare, which I used to use when I was in Ireland. CoverWise is generally cheaper and Swisscare is a little more expensive. For CoverWise, you can get an insurance as little as between 11 to 15 pounds for a 1-year medical travel cover, which is an absolute steal in my opinion. But I then used to use Swisscare when I was in Ireland. Another thing they want to know is that you actually work if you're working. Well, for students, you don't need that. Now, living means of livelihood, I'm going to be going to proof of funds. If you're going to be traveling to their country, they also want to know that you have enough money to survive in their country when you're there, right? So you obviously need to have enough money in your account. Roughly, what I generally advise people is to give them about €100 a day times the number of days you'll be spending there. So if you're going to be spending 8 days in the country, you need to multiply that with a minimum of €100 in your bank account for you to travel. On the safe side, I'll usually have generally more than the minimum required amount anyway. And if you're a student, you also just need to show that your parents are giving you money and you have enough money to sustain yourself. Another part I'd like to touch on would be the part of sponsorship. So if you're a student or if you're working and you don't have enough money to show that you're going on this trip, you can get a close relative of yours, husband, sister, brother, uncle, mom, dad, anybody, to act as a sponsor. But obviously this would require additional documentation, right? So the documents you'd need if you're getting somebody to act as a sponsor for you would be a letter from that person stating their relationship with you and the things they will be covering. An example of the letter is this: stating your relationship with them, what they will be covering, and a couple of all those leads. Another thing they would need to add to this application would be their pay slip to show that they're working, or if they're business owners, just proof that they own a business, and sometimes their relationship with you. So if I was getting my brother, for example, to sponsor me, I'll get a copy of our birth certificates to show that we're actually born by the same parents. And if I was getting my mom to sponsor me, I would just submit only my birth certificate to show that that person is actually my mom, just to show a sort of relationship that this person is actually related to me and they're willing to sponsor me. Moving to another aspect that people tend to miss. I don't think it's extremely important, but because this visa application is not exactly an interview, you don't get to go to the embassy to explain yourself or say anything. I tend to use a letter of explanation or a letter of introduction as backup. What this letter of introduction basically does is say what I do, why I'm going to their country, how many days I will be gone for. Then at the end, I tend to list out an itinerary of things I'll be doing, like day 1, this is what I'll do, day 2, this is what I'll do, just to give an idea that you actually know what you're doing and you know why you're going to the country. Even if you're going to visit, you can just say day 1 arrival, day 15 to day 70. You're going to be hanging out with your friends, or you're going to be hanging out with your cousin. But this gives a clear picture as to what exactly you're going to do. You need to submit your bank statement that shows that you actually have enough money. Even if it doesn't show that you have enough money, if you have a sponsor, I think you still have to print it off. For me, I'll usually print it off, and I'll usually print it off anyway, just to let them know that, I reside in that country. And if you have enough money to sponsor yourself, you need to print out about 3 to 6 months bank statements showing just what's been going on in your account. Most importantly, if you're earning a salary, you may need to submit the accounts that your salary goes into, just to show that there's an actual correlation between what your pay slip is showing and what your bank account is showing. If you're living in a country outside of your nationality, when you eventually get a visa appointment to go for your biometrics, you need to go with your residence permit. And if you're living in your home country where you don't need to show that you need a residence permit, you can just go there with your passport. But if you're living outside your home country, then you need to go with your residence permit saying that you have valid reason to be in that country. I think basically those are the short steps that I would generally take, and I have been applying for a Schengen visa since 2019. That's 5 years now, and I have never been refused a Schengen visa. So I think I am expert enough to give you advice on how to apply for a Schengen visa. You can always drop your questions or comments in the comment section. Lastly, when they finally approve your visa, it could either be a single entry, a double entry, or a multiple entry Schengen visa. I always pray to get a multiple entry Schengen visa, because after going through all this stress and you end up getting a single entry, it would be very disheartening. If you work, or if you school, or if you're on some sort of income, you just need to show proof that these things actually exist. For example, if you work, you need a letter from your employer saying that you work there. Sometimes they're lax about it, other times they are not. Just to be safe, I always submit a letter from my employer saying that I work in this company, this is what I earn, I've been working since this particular time, and that works, right? And if you're a student, you only need I know that for UK schools, there's an automatic letter on your school website you can download. But if you're schooling outside the UK, you just need to get a letter from your department with a letterhead saying that you're a student here, this is when you're going to be done with your studies, they expect you back, yada yada yada, and all that fancy things. If you're working, you also need to show proof that you're getting an income, which is your payslip. A 3-month payslip is usually sufficient. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and kindly subscribe to my channel to get more educative episodes like this. Bye.